Body swapping isn't a trope that you would typically associate with a slasher film, but with Freaky, released in 2020, we have a film that pulls that off with humour and horror in equal measure. Directed by Christopher Landon, Freaky brings together that unexpected charm of teen comedy with the brutal edge of a classic slasher film, while placing itself in a very specific subgenre that is seeing classic nostalgic films being blended with modern horror. Much like Happy Death Day pays homage to Groundhog Day, and Totally Killer fuses Back to the Future with a Scream-like slasher, Freaky is a modern-day reimagination of Freaky Friday, only this time with a lot more blood. At its heart, Freaky is so much more than just a slasher comedy though. It's a story about empowerment. Millie, a quiet high schooler used to blending into the background after the trauma that she has suffered, suddenly finds herself trapped in the body of the notorious Blissfield Butcher. What follows isn't only a fight for survival, but a journey of self-discovery as Millie learns to wield the power she's never experienced before. I wanted to take a look at how Freaky subverts the typical slasher formula that we're familiarised with, while also delivering a pretty emotional character journey that is tenderly written and worth rooting for. If you haven't seen the film before, then please take this as your chance to click away and watch it. And if you have, then there's really nothing else worth waiting around for, so with all the formalities out of the way, let's get freaky. The heart of this film is a premise that seems almost too ridiculous to work. A body swap comedy with a teenage girl and a middle-aged serial killer switching bodies. But that very absurdity is what actually makes the film such a refreshing addition to horror in recent years. Freaky leans into that high concept premise, turning it into something more than just the one-note joke it could have become. From the outset, it establishes itself as a slasher with a brutal sense of humour, kicking us off with a classic cold open. Here, we're introduced to the Blissfield Butcher, played by Vaughn, in a scene that feels written straight out of an 80s horror flick, complete with a few gruesome kills that set the tone for what to expect going forward. It's brutal, violent and familiar, drawing from classic slasher traditions where an unstoppable force terrorises teens. However, it doesn't take long after that for Freaky to turn that script on its head when Millie, a shy high school girl played by Kathryn Newton, finds herself as the Butcher's next target. What makes this setup stand out from other slasher films is how quickly that twist is actually introduced. After an encounter between Millie and the Butcher involving a cursed dagger that was set up in the opening scene, they wake up the next morning in each other's bodies, and that's when the film really takes off. It's here that Freaky reveals its true colours, blending that body swap trope that we've seen in films like Freaky Friday with the usual violent spectacle of slasher horror. The juxtaposition of Millie's small teenage body housing a dangerous serial killer and the Butcher's hulking frame now inhabited by a terrified teenage girl makes for both comedic and tense moments at times. This twist breathes new life into what could have been a pretty typical slasher film. The audience suddenly gets thrown into this scenario where our protagonist must not only survive but also convince her friends of who she truly is. Meanwhile, the Butcher now hides in plain sight as Millie, using his new identity to stalk his victims with a terrifying sense of detachment. It's a clever inversion of that classic final girl trope that we're all familiar with, where instead of the usual scenario of a girl being chased by the killer, Millie becomes that killer, at least physically. This makes for some fun and tense moments throughout, as Millie, now in the Butcher's body, has to adjust to being a towering, physically imposing figure, while the Butcher, stuck in Millie's body, uses her unsuspecting, non-threatening appearance to get closer to his prey. The film plays on the subversion of our expectations, keeping the audience on edge and amused at the same time. It's not just a slasher film where the protagonist runs and hides from a killer, it's a battle for identity and survival with an added layer of absurdity. Freaky's premise forces both Millie and the Butcher to adapt in ways that upend traditional slasher dynamics, making the thrill of the chase feel fresh and unpredictable. With inventive set pieces, Freaky is free to continue to surprise the audience while staying true to its classic slasher roots. It doesn't shy away from gory, over-the-top kills that would feel at home in any big-name franchise, but these moments are then always followed by lighter, comedic beats that always balance out that horror. In this way, Freaky doesn't just offer audiences a clever twist on two genres, it commits to both. The humour is sharp and full of wit, and the horror is real, complete with creative kills that remind us of the type of movie we're watching. Landon's direction ensures that neither element overwhelms the other at any given time, and the result is a film that is as fun as it is thrilling.
It's been a year. You can't keep living your life for someone else. You've got to start doing things for you.
Yeah, it's not that easy.
While Freaky excels at twisting that familiar slasher formula, Millie's emotional arc grounds the film and gives it that lasting impact. Beneath the gore and the humour, Freaky tells a story of self-discovery and empowerment, and that sort of aspect can really resonate with an audience if it's done well like it is here. At the start, Millie is a character that many could relate to. She's quiet, she's overlooked, and she's struggling to find her place in life. Living in the shadow of her father's death, dealing with bullies at school, and wrestling with a deep sense of inadequacy, it's a life defined by self-doubt and the belief that she's not strong enough to stand up for herself. But when the body swap forces her into the role of the Blissfield Butcher, it also forces her to confront her fears and limitations in a way that she probably never expected to. For the audience, Millie's journey goes beyond just physical empowerment. It's about reclaiming that agency over her own life. The film taps into this universal theme, the idea that sometimes we recognise our strengths when we're pushed to our absolute limits. This can resonate with anyone who's ever felt powerless or sidelined, and Freaky shows that true strength can often come from within, not from external appearances. The body swap not only serves as a plot device, but it also becomes a metaphor for transformation, physically, emotionally, and psychologically. The comedic irony of Millie's newfound strength inside the body of a hulking serial killer is entertaining, sure, but it's the emotional truth behind it that really strikes a chord. Watching Millie embrace her power, both literally and figuratively, makes her story more than just a series of slasher thrills. It's an emotional victory for anyone who's ever struggled with self-worth and can impose themselves on this character. This emotional journey is made even more poignant by the relationships Millie shares with her friends and family. Her best friends, Nyla and Josh, remain her emotional support throughout, reminding her, and by extension the audience, that identity is about so much more than just outward appearances. Millie's conversation with her mother in the store, in which she finally begins to acknowledge her grief and step out of her father's shadow, is one of the film's most heartfelt moments, and I absolutely love it.
I lost somebody too.
Really?
Yeah. I lost my dad.
I'm so sorry.
It's in these moments of vulnerability that the audience can't help but connect with her struggles and really see Millie as a complete character. By the end of the film, Millie has not only survived what was a threat to her life, but also the emotional turbulence of her teenage years. Her arc becomes a testament to inner strength, one that speaks to the audience on a deeper level. As viewers, we're not just cheering for Millie because she defeats a killer, we're cheering for her because she defeats the doubts that held her back for so long. Freaky has a knack of leaving this lasting impression, not just as a fun horror comedy, but as a film with a thematic depth that encourages viewers to see their potential. It's that emotional resonance that sticks with you long after the credits roll, making Millie's journey a deeply affecting one for audiences who can see themselves in her own growth.
Bitch, please. Ginny hated Ryler after she started that rumor about Ginny getting a carrot stuck in her pussy.
Don't say that word.
Whatever. Vagina.
Without a doubt, one of Freaky's greatest achievements is its ability to blend two seemingly opposing genres, horror and comedy, without letting one overshadow the other. Many horror comedies can really struggle to strike this balance, but Freaky masterfully delivers both genuine laughs and intense thrills. A significant part of why this works so well comes down to Kathryn Newton's brilliant dual performance, where she effortlessly transitions between the roles of victim and killer. Newton's portrayal of Millie and the Blissfield Butcher is a major factor in maintaining this delicate tonal balance. The comedic potential of the body swap premise is fully realised, especially when Vince Vaughn, playing Millie trapped in the Butcher's body, attempts to navigate a completely new environment. Vaughn's physical comedy is great, but their performances together are what ground the film emotionally and also keep the stakes just as high. When Newton embodies the Butcher in Millie's body, her performance transforms into something terrifying. Gone are Millie's awkwardness and vulnerability, replaced by this eerie confidence and cold menace. It's in the subtlety of Newton's posture, her deadpan stares, and her calm, almost predatory presence that the horror truly begins to emerge. Watching her interact with her friends and her family while knowing that the butcher is lurking beneath that face creates this unsettling tension, filling every encounter with a layer of danger. The humour of the idea is also amplified through that absurdity of a hardened killer suddenly inhabiting a teenager's body, trying to adapt to the mundane realities of high school. The way Newton physically handles this transition, navigating that limitation of her new form while maintaining the butcher's lethal instincts, makes for some of the film's most laugh-out-loud moments.
Right? Millie? She's method, never breaks character. Naughty girl!
Yet the comedy never ever fully undercuts the horror.
Body's fucking useless!
There is always this looming sense of danger as Newton constantly reminds the audience that the butcher is still very much a threat, even in this disarming new form. Director Christopher Landon, who previously helmed Happy Death Day, has a talent for marrying horror with humour, and Freaky is definitely no exception to this. He leans into the absurdity of that body swap premise while still delivering on that horror front with brutal creative kills that feel well worthy of a slasher film. The violence is unapologetically graphic and it's in stark contrast to the humour, but that contrast only heightens the impact of both. The woodshop table saw scene is just one of many moments that deliver that kind of gruesome slasher vibe that fans expect, but they're often then followed by comedic beats that let the audience catch their breath before the next shock. Newton's dual performance elevates this balancing act. There's one scene where as the butcher she has to try and convince her friends of her identity, but then at the same time she also weaponizes Millie's unassuming appearance to get closer to those victims, using her newfound anonymity to further her violent agenda. Both roles that she plays here require distinct physicality and emotional nuance to split them apart, and Newton pulls it off seamlessly. What makes this film special is how it uses that balance of horror and comedy to allow itself to explore deeper themes. Millie's journey is not just about escaping the butcher's body, it's about reclaiming her sense of identity and self-worth. The body swap metaphor speaks to the insecurities many teenagers feel, but by the end of the film, Millie's newfound confidence and strength resonate on a deeply emotional level. She begins this movie feeling invisible and also powerless, but through her fight to reclaim her body, she grows into a more self-assured version of herself. Ultimately, I personally think Freaky excels at pretty much everything it wants to do because it respects both the horror and the comedy and allows each aspect to elevate the other. The gruesome kills feel all the more impactful when juxtaposed with moments of levity, and the humour lands harder because it breaks tension built up by horror. Kathryn Newton's dual performance anchors this film, ensuring that both elements work in tandem, creating this horror comedy that's not only entertaining, but emotionally resonant too.
I learned something when I was in your body, too.
What's that?
Having balls sucks.
At its core, Freaky is so much more than just a clever genre mashup. It's a film that celebrates that chaotic, messy, and often hilarious nature of identity, which, come to think of it, is something that we've explored in this channel quite a lot recently. By blending the brutality of slasher horror with sharp, witty comedy, Freaky carves out a unique space in modern horror that pays homage to the classics while offering something fresh and exciting. Kathryn Newton's performance as both victim and killer is a standout, providing that emotional and tonal range that allows the film to succeed as both a slasher and a heartfelt story filled with self-discovery. From its inventive kills to laugh-out-loud moments, Freaky keeps audiences on their toes, never letting them fully settle into one genre. It's a testament to the director's ability to craft a film that's equal parts horror and comedy, all while weaving in a character-driven narrative that resonates emotionally. In the end, Freaky doesn't just entertain, it leaves a lasting impact, especially through Millie's journey of reclaiming her identity and finding inner strength. It's a film that doesn't just aim for shocks and laughs, but connects on a deeper level, reminding us why the horror genre remains such a proven ground for emotional storytelling.